Good morning, IWS. I first want to thank Jim and Nancy and Daryl for the opportunity to stand before you and teach from the word of the Lord. I delight in these wonderful opportunities that you give me to address such an august body of believers, worshipers, and people who are serious about their relationship with God. I want to talk this morning about the invitation to embrace wisdom. But in doing so, I want to issue a challenge. I want to challenge every believer to become one of wisdom's millionaires. I want to reread the first verse from the lesson text in James and the last verse from the Psalm. These passages express godly wisdom's responsibility and godly wisdom's enormous value. Listen to them again. James 3:13 says, "If you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom." Now the Psalm 119 and 72. Your instructions are more valuable to me than millions in gold and silver. Centuries apart, these texts in James 3 and Psalm 119 convey a valuable lesson to all who love feasting on the Word. Incidentally, I have a commentary series by that title, Feasting on the Word. It was recommended by my Lutheran pastor sister to her non-denominational brother, both raised by a Baptist reverend and a Pentecostal missionary, with results now presented at a liturgical school. First point, wisdom is not a denominationally restricted virtue. All can and should have it, but to get wisdom, we must embrace wisdom's invitation. To see us all together when all could is to understand wisdom's value. There were obviously differing points of view that came because of denominational polity, but all understood the value of wisdom and all chose to embrace it. You see, there are character traits available to all that go beyond the societal or self-imposed barriers of you are different and therefore undeserving, unworthy, or you're not to be trusted. Wisdom is one of these traits. Godly wisdom should be everywhere. Godly wisdom ought to be in everything. Godly wisdom can positively affect everybody, and it's available to all if we embrace godly wisdom's invitation. James tells us early on in the first chapter of his book, if you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. So why aren't nations, peoples, cultures, individuals, and even churches overflowing with this biblically offered virtue? M. Scott Peck quotes Robert Frost in his book, The Road Less Traveled, and says this: "Two roads diverge in the woods. I took the road less traveled, and it has made all the difference." Everybody has an opportunity, invitation to embrace wisdom, but all do not accept. James, like Frost, presents us with two diverging paths, both defined as a type of wisdom, one earthly and one godly. All we have to do is look out among us and see which is the more traveled path in our world today. What do we see more of? And I'm paraphrasing. Bitterly jealous and selfish ambitions that cover up the truth with boasting and lying, that lead us into disorder and every kind of evil. And then to make sure that we understand how wrong this kind of abhorrent wisdom is, James names it as earthly, unspiritual, and even demonic. Ouch. That is a biting rebuke. Then James gives us what we all are really in need of, wisdom that comes from above. And he describes it this way. He says it is first pure, then peace-loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. This wisdom is full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. Now, I want to be honest. I'm not really surprised that general society lacks this kind of wisdom. My pain is rooted in a church world that does not seem to seek nor embrace godly wisdom. Now, my delight is when the church world does. Here's this brief example. I watch an app called The Chosen. It is a presentation of what the life of Jesus was like when he entered the first century. They take liberties in presentations. Too many, I thought, as I watched the first episode. But my friend who recommended the series told me, don't forget to watch the deep dive at the end of each episode. There is a rabbi, a priest, and an evangelical discussing each episode. And do you know how they are discussing it? With wisdom that comes from above. They are doing it without rancor, without bitterness, without condemnation. You see, invitations are only as good as our decision to accept them. We all have opportunities to take wisdom's less traveled road, a road that will make all the difference in us and in society. Perhaps it's the cost of this wisdom that is its stumbling block. Peck calls for a kind of discipline that requires delayed gratification, acceptance of responsibility, dedication to the truth, and balancing. I can't go into them this morning. I don't have the time. I want to be invited back. But far too many do not take this less traveled road. Today's text, the epistle, the psalm, undergirded by gospel, the law, and prophets, compel us to take this less worn path of godly wisdom. This path is only less worn because it's less used. This path is not smaller, narrower, or less available. It's just not well traveled. Let's commit as a believing body to broaden this path. Our nation, our church world, seem to be at a crossroads of sorts. We seem to be at each other's throats. We cannot get along. And if there was ever a time that we are in need of heavenly wisdom, it's now. We need men. We need women. We need leaders. We need followers. We need organizations. And most of all, we need churches to embrace wisdom. Those who take this less traveled path and prove it by living honorable lives, producing good works, displaying the humility that comes from wisdom. And get this now, the God who cannot lie promises a reward that is more valuable than millions in gold and silver. Look at the Psalm text. Your instructions are more valuable to me than millions in gold and silver. I asked you, I plead with you, embrace wisdom's invitation and become one of wisdom's millionaires. The choice is yours. Two roads diverged in the woods. I took the road less traveled, and it has made all the difference. God bless you, my brothers and my sisters. Hope to see you again. Amen.